Hello ladies and gentlemen in the YouTube world, James Lunsford in one of my workshops, reloading the area of my home, and I thought I'd make a video today to talk to you about, and that's my Thompson Center Encore or Pro Hunter rifles. I've had one for several years, let's see, 2018 now, so I guess I've had one for 16 years, and I've been swapping barrels back and forth, but this year, toward the close of season, I decided to buy a new action and stock, now the Thompson Center Encore Pro Hunter series. And what this means is I'm going to be doing a trigger job on this new gun because I, for one, just am not satisfied with the way the trigger comes from the factory. And I'm going to demonstrate why, and then talk a little bit about the trigger parts that I order and use to lighten this trigger pull. Sort of a disclaimer in case YouTube videos have to have a disclaimer. Don't do this if you're not completely confident in your ability to read and follow instructions to the minutest detail and to do complicated assembly and disassembly work with small mechanical parts, to use punches and again follow directions. And it probably helps a lot if you have a real basic understanding of how guns work in general, not just pull the trigger or cock the hammer and pull the trigger, but actually the internal workings of the trigger and the contact surfaces. And if you don't have that already, I will be suggesting a way for you to get that knowledge. But it's just important that you really feel confident in your ability to read and follow directions, and then you can do this work. The real trick is read and follow directions. I'm going to demonstrate now why this gun needs to have a trigger job done, and what I really hope is that the video captures this pretty well. A couple of things before we do that. I'm going to have to quote-unquote dry fire this action in order to demonstrate this, and it's something that you need to be able to take some precautions in order to release this hammer. There are a couple of things that you can do. You can remove the breech plug and firing assembly mechanism from this gun and then let the hammer strike the steel of the frame, which is what I'm going to do, but I'm not going to make you watch me do that. So we'll pause the recording for now and come back after I've done that little bit of work. Okay, so here's the gun with the breech plug and firing assembly removed. Here's the breech plug and firing assembly. Breech plug has a spring on it, and you want to be careful not to let that fall out. So if you're going to do this, tilt the gun forward so it doesn't fall out when you release it. You'll notice the little stainless steel Allen head screw that holds it in has a little Loctite on it to prevent it from coming out when you don't want it to. You just need to make sure you don't lose any of those parts. We now have our action with the breech plug removed, no firing pin for the hammer to strike, and we just can pull the trigger and dry fire the gun. Now I don't particularly like to just let it hit, but I'm going to let it hit when I test it with the scale. But for now I'm just going to release it. And I'm going to mention that if you're going to do this, you need to understand that there is a slight safety mechanism at work in the Thompson Center Encore Pro Hunter, and there is a little lever down inside the gun, and you have to be able to find that. Now normally a barrel is going to press that in, and you don't have to press it in far. If you're going to cock the gun without a barrel on it, you have to be able to just reach in there in the action and press that in with your finger, and then you can cock the gun. So now the gun is cocked. In order to test the release pressure of the trigger, you'll need a trigger pull scale. I really suggest that you either buy one. They're not terribly expensive. I happen to be using an RCBS, an old style that I've had for a long time. Some of the new ones are digital, and I don't know, some things about my reloading I just do old school analog because they don't require electricity, and I kind of like the idea that if our backs are ever against the wall, please God may they never be, that there are some things that I can just do without electricity and be able to make do, and therefore make do without electricity, right? I'm going to cock the gun. Then I'm going to reset the scale to make sure the indicator, it's got a little indicator that will set and hold the position of the maximum pull on the trigger. And then I am going to pull the trigger with the trigger pull scale in order to show you how much tension it takes to release. Now, in order to simulate this the best you can, you need to get that trigger pull scale right where your finger would be, and then you need to slowly pull back until the hammer falls. Now, at this point, I'm passing the 3-pound mark, approaching the 4-pound mark, approaching the 5-pound mark, I'm approaching the 6-pound mark. Real slow, working it back, get it close to the 6-pound mark. Whoa, and it popped. And it popped right at 6 pounds. Right at 6 pounds. I'm going to do this again and see if it breaks there again at the same point. Just for reference, I think a 6-pound trigger pull, which reminds me of shooting a double action revolver, is too heavy for my shooting and hunting. I just don't like that at all. So we're going to try this again. We're going to see, we're going to break about just over 6 pounds that time. If I do it real careful, maybe I'll get it to break at 6. But so far, every time I've done this, trying to be sure I get my trigger scale pulled in just the right place and pull it. You know, that time it broke at 5 3/4. Anyway, you'll get my point. 5 3/4, 6, 6 1/4, just kind of depending upon the angle at which I pull this thing. That's a hard trigger pull. Trigger pull is a matter of personal preference in many cases. I like my hunting weapons. To break at 2.5 pounds. I do have one bench rest shooting rifle set up for very long range and possibly for shooting varmints, and I have that trigger set more like 2 pounds, but with a 2-pound trigger pull you have to be careful because you can bump it with a wad of clothing and it will pull the trigger, it will set the trigger off. So you have to be very careful about following my father's one rule of gun safety. Yes, he only had one rule of gun safety, and that was don't do anything stupid with a gun. My father defined doing something stupid with a gun like this: pointing a gun at anything you do not intend to kill. So I grew up hearing that over and over again, and so I learned it. And so we do not point guns at anything we do not intend to kill. So if you're going to carry a gun with a light trigger, you always need to keep Jim Lunsford's gun safety rule number 1. Don't do anything stupid with a gun, and remember, stupid with a gun is letting the barrel, the end of the gun, point toward anything you do not intend to kill. It's amazing how hard it is to hurt somebody with a gun or to destroy something with a gun that you did not intend to destroy if you're always careful never to point a gun at anything you do not intend to kill. Remember that. Alright, that was a freebie. 5 3/4, 6-pound trigger pull, too hard for my hunting weapon, and why this beautiful, wonderful Thompson Center action, my favorite action, my hunting weapon of choice now for 16 years, and as the purchase of a second one of these actions tells the rest of the world, something I've already decided, this will be my hunting weapon of choice for the rest of my life. I just love the platform, but the trigger has to be reworked, and that involves a lot of steps. I'm going to try to record most of them for you and eventually edit this video and put it out so somebody might be encouraged to do the same, and maybe you can enjoy this platform as much as I do. This is Mike Belm, B-E-L-L-M, Mike Belm's TC's Trigger Job Instructions for the Thompson Center Encore Pro Hunter NG2 from www.thompsoncenteroncore.com. BELLMTCS.com. Just so everybody out there in the world knows, I've never met Mr. Belm, Mr. Mike Belm. I have used several of his trigger kits on my guns and friends' guns, family members' guns, and I like them, and I've had no trouble with them at all. The kit provides everything you need. Mike does not pay me. He doesn't give me anything. Again, I've never met the man, but I like his product, and this is what I choose to use. And so I'm telling you that. You'll notice that you get a nice little instruction manual, and it has pictures and everything in it, and lots of words, and that's important. You get to sort of see Mike Belm's picture, and I'm not going to really show this manual off too terribly much because he sells this as part of his kit. It's how he makes some money, and I appreciate what he does in making these quality parts and kits available, and I don't want to take anything away from him. You can buy this kit about $50, and this particular kit comes with a spring designed to take the trigger pull on the Thompson Center Encore down to between 2 and 2.5 pounds. And depending upon some other adjustments you make, you can definitely get there. It comes with most of the tools you need. It doesn't come with a little hammer, but it does come with punches the right size. It comes with the Allen heads that are the right size. It comes with a nice little special pair of pliers. You notice the little bend on the end. That's designed to help you install a spring. It comes with a spring kit, and again, that's from Mike Belm, www.bellmtcs.com. You have to get the stock off of the action. I have a few other work surfaces, but I'm using this one for the purpose of the video. And if you take your Thompson Center action, you turn it over, what you're going to find is that there are two Phillips head screws on the cap of the buttstock. And you're going to take those screws out. I sort of like to loosen them both without completely removing them yet. And then I like to slip the cap up so that hopefully as that screw comes loose, and then I can loosen. And they both stay in there, and I can just set them down and not lose them. Then you're going to see inside you have a screw that needs an Allen wrench or a hex key, which Mike Belm includes in his kit. Now, somewhere in my workbench for guns I have some Allen heads, but I'm just going to use the kit because, again, he provides everything you need. That's the one for this, and you get to just take this Allen screw out. It's got a lock washer under it and a little washer, and once I know it's loose, then I'm going to hold my action, turn it upside down. I'm going to work all of that out so the screw and the washers and all stay together. I'm going to set them down with a little cap, and then we expect this action to separate from, there you go. That's how you get the action out of the buttstock. Now we're going to work on the action. We will be following the directions provided in Belm's instructions. Again, that's something he sells, and so I will be referencing those without necessarily trying to film them all. Here's our little encore action. This is where the business happens. This is what makes it happen, and boy do I like this little mechanism. Folks at Thompson Center make a quality product. I have a feeling that the strong trigger pulls are a manufacturer's safeguard against people not keeping Jim Lunsford's, that was my dad, remember, his first rule of gun safety, meaning that sometimes people may not always keep the gun pointed in a safe direction. If the trigger pulls too light, you don't want it to go off and hurt anybody, so you need to know what you're doing if you're going to lighten your trigger pull up, but it will surely make the gun a more accurate platform and more enjoyable to shoot. So here we go. Alright, there we have the Encore action disassembled according to the instructions provided by Mike Bell. Nice little piece of machined stainless steel. And on to the next step of working with the trigger parts and considering whether or not we need to polish those trigger parts, and then installing the new springs. Mr. Belm does a great job of explaining the trigger and its parts, and so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to leave that to him. He's much better at it than me. But here's a trigger. It actually looks like a trigger. This is where your finger touches, right? For all those out there in the world who don't understand the way guns work, and that's okay. Not everybody has to. But one of the things that you really want to look at, because it strikes me that depending upon the day, and that these parts come to you in different grades of polish and finish. Some of these triggers that I have messed with over the years, not that I'm a great expert at this or feel like I'm just the end all, but I have done this for a few friends and helped some. And in different particular manufacturing runs, sometimes the tooling seems to me to be just a little better or a little worse. This particular gun, it's the first time I've actually looked at the internal parts, looks like it has a pretty good finish, so I think very little polishing is actually going to be necessary to the contact surfaces. I am going to polish them just because I'm going to polish them. That's what I do to my guns, to make sure that everything is as smooth as possible. But you should examine them for rough edges, and you should follow the instructions carefully regarding how you should file or flatten or smooth those if necessary. Again, I'm inspecting these parts, and I believe that the sears, the contact surfaces, are all in such good shape that I'm only going to use a Dremel with a felt wheel and some jeweler's rouge, literally to do nothing but give them a polish, just to smooth what's already good clean metal. If there are rough edges or jagged edges or tooling marks that you can feel other than the one that's kind of manufactured in, then I would strongly recommend that you follow Belm's instructions very carefully, and that you flatten those with the proper kinds of hones, diamond cards. You need to use very fine stones and be very careful about that. But he gives great instructions on doing that. Again, I am actually going to use a felt wheel and jeweler's rouge just to make sure that those contact surfaces are just highly polished and therefore as smooth as they possibly can be. I'm going to go through a series of stages polishing the contact surfaces of the trigger. I'm going to use this fine Dremel abrasive wheel followed by jeweler's rouge on felt, I think, and I do have a grit impregnated rubber stone, polishing stone, just in case I decide I need it. Using a low speed, somebody's going to say, oh, you're not using a Dremel, and I'm going to say, you know, you're right, I'm using a Black & Decker thing. My Dremel's in my shop, and this is what I keep in here. My wood shop, my Dremel's in my wood shop, where that just polished right up. Don't want to change the profile at all, don't want to change the shape of the metal, I just want that surface where it contacts to be so shiny and polished and smooth. And it doesn't take long. That will make a difference in how it feels. But you don't want to get crazy. You don't want to over polish. And by that, I mean you don't want to go from polishing, and I'm using very light pressure. You don't want to go from polishing to cutting, because if you do, you'll be unhappy. You'll have a gun that doesn't behave properly for you anymore. That didn't take very much on that little guy. I am really, really happy the way that's working. I'm going to get in here and get some of this Jeweler's Rouge on that. Coat that little wheel on that Jeweler's Rouge. And I'm going to go back at these parts with it, and I'm going to kind of make a pass where I use that Jeweler's Rouge to make those same motions I did with the other. But again, the goal here is to polish and to not change the shape of anything. So this is quick, low speed on the Dremel, and you're going to be able to tell when you're doing this in the light, because it changes, it becomes a mirror finish. And this is, I'm not polishing the face of the hammer, I'm polishing down here where the hammer's in contact with other moving parts. And if there's any little flaw in the metal, and there are oftentimes, those are going to be exposed as you polish that surface to a mirror finish. Anywhere that might roll, I want it to be a polished surface, any of those contacts. And I think we've got it. And now, just in case we left any kind of residue from that little operation, I'm going to take a clean felt wheel, actually this little felt cone, and I am going to put him to work. Again, this is a clean one. No Jeweler's Rouge on it, and I'm just going to hit every place there that I just touched. That kind of, this is a hard felt cone. My goal is just to make sure there's no residue of that Jeweler's Rouge left on there. And again, a real light touch, and I think we're done. I am going to wipe all of these surfaces down now with that Tetra gun lube to make sure that everything gets a very light coating. It's probably a real good idea to learn to take your Encore down from time to time and clean and lubricate all of your trigger parts, just as a matter of course. Now it becomes time to begin thinking about putting all this together. I'm actually not going to show the whole reassembly. Again, you can buy Mr. Belm's kit, and I'm going to reassemble it with his kit and then see what kind of difference we have in the trigger pull. And there we have it. So now let's see, did we make an actual improvement to the trigger pull? And to know that for sure, we have to cock it, which is so much smoother than it used to be. We'll reset our trigger pull gauge, and we will dry fire by pulling the trigger pull. And we break right at 2 1/4 pounds, right at 2 1/4. What I consider to be a perfect trigger for my hunting and shooting purposes. There we go, reset, pull it. And that time we broke at 2 1/8. So 2 1/8, 2 1/4. To me, again, that's perfect. Between 2 and 2 1/2, to me, is just 2 1/8. Man, thank you, Mr. Belm, and that trigger kit. And now we have a Thompson Center platform, which quite frankly will absolutely allow you to reach the potential of this shooting platform.